first step in doing any kind of a teardown like this is to hit as much of the hardware with penetrating oil starting a few days before you want to actually try and begin taking it apart. That way it gives you the best possible chance of being able to pull things out without actually stripping screws and things, any of the hardware that holds on things like wastegates, particularly the bolts that go into the turbine housing are prone to having rust build up on those, so you want to hit those with penetrating oil and hit all around this collar with penetrating oil to try and get it in between the two metal surfaces so that they will come apart a little bit more easily. Part of the reason I'm doing the teardown is to do, one, a rebuild, but two, I want to be able to use these housings in a process I haven't done yet, but I think will work actually really well. I'm going to clean them up thoroughly, mask them off, and then do a bake-on ceramic coating, so not the just normal high-temp paint or whatever, the VHT stuff. I'm going to do an actual bake-on ceramic coating on these to help keep some of that heat inside the turbine and keep that from just venting out into the engine bay completely, because I want to take as much of the heat out using the turbine, which is how it actually works to spool. I want to use as much as possible and take advantage as much as possible of this smaller A to R ratio on the turbine to try and get really low spool. So I'm hoping to be able to hit full boost by somewhere around 3,000 to 3,200 RPM when all said and done off of this budget system, which will work better in terms of quicker spool than anything short of spending probably 2 to 3 grand, closer to 3 grand on a kit with a full ball bearing turbo. So that's the aim of this. So you want to try and always get square onto the bolt with the proper size box end, preferably, or open end if you don't have the room for a box end. Get on them square and then break them loose gently, and you can start working off whatever piece that is, in this case the oil drain flange. I'm going to go after the wastegate here, and I'm going to start by pulling off, see if I can get it, there we go, get it actually on camera, actually cooperate and come off nice, and you can set it aside with your other parts, and then you can divorce the two parts, and the flapper valve is free, and we can actually get a little peek inside there, and doesn't look like there's any cracking in the housing or anything like that, so it looks like things are good there. It moves freely, so yeah, I'll clean off some of the carbon from that when I do the full cleanup of this guy, and should be good for doing the rest of the rebuild. With that, your wastegate from the turbo is off. Very simple. Then you can start working on getting some of these other parts out of the way. Next ones I'll do are pull off these two bolts holding in the oil and water, looks like a water return assembly, maybe that's water feed, I don't really know how they did it on these cars, but the oil feed is up top, so I'm going to take off the oil feed and the water return, I'm assuming. So the trick for getting these turbine bolts loose was to take it outside to put the bolts back in the compressor housing for the wastegate to try and keep that stable. Just like Greg said in his video that just went up recently on Car Passion channel, you sort of put a foot on it and put a big thick half-inch drive wrench for this particular case on it, and you whack it with a hammer and hope that things don't break. And then you can start to get enough traction on these bolts that they'll actually start to come out, just like that. And you do that for this little bitty guy, all 4 of them, and yeah, then you take them off slowly but surely, and once you get far enough that you need the exhaust housing to move, you start gently whacking that with the outside, around the outside as much as possible with the hammer, and get the pieces to release from each other. And then you're one step closer in your rebuild. The bolts, the banjo bolts, were so tight that I decided I was just going to disconnect here, and I may just leave them for the moment. So based on what I'm seeing here, it doesn't actually look like, looking real carefully at the housing, clearly the seals were shot on this guy, but it doesn't actually look like, there might be some slight, just ever so slight glancing contact there on the side, but the compressor wheel itself actually looks to be in pretty good shape, and it doesn't appear to have any fractures or any scrape marks or anything, and it appears to be in actually generally pretty good shape. So I think this turbo can be rebuilt and put back together once it's thoroughly cleaned up, which will be one of the next tasks. And then I'm going to be real careful to mark all of the pieces and just do a rebuild. Likewise, the exhaust side, turbine, doesn't look like it's made contact anywhere. There's no shiny spots. It's all just carbon back there. You can hear the bearings are, the journal bearings are dead in this guy, but after some basic cleanup, this guy will be really good to go. And this housing will be pretty simple to clean up. The housing itself looks like it's in really good shape. So I'm going to clean this guy up as well, and then work on getting the outside prepped for a full ceramic coating, so it will be some sort of a silver color by the time all that's done. Here you can see I've cleaned up the parts, and without all of the oil and carbon in there, the parts actually look a whole lot better, and it looks a whole lot more simple to go ahead and proceed with the rebuild of this particular turbo. So I determined that after being able to pull the compressor nut off, remembering that this is a left-hand thread, it was a little bit tight, a little bit tighter than I expected it to be to get that nut loosened. Once it's off, the compressor wheel was able to slide off pretty readily. The compressor wheel hasn't been damaged by contacting the sidewall of the compressor housing, and there's no visible damage to the turbine, which suggests that I can use both of those again in the rebuild. The story is a little bit different for the case of what I'm terming the basket case turbo, so that's going to be a separate disassembly video because that requires a significantly different treatment to strip that down to the CHRA, the emptied out CHRA, so that you can do a rebuild for that one. So that will be its own separate video. But for the purposes of this video, I'll proceed to taking out the bearings and disassembling everything to get to the stripped out CHRA. It's the same process that it will be for the other video, but I'll clarify everything here. So by carefully pressing just down straight square on the nut, I was able to get the turbine wheel to disengage. The factory oil seal ring is definitely pretty grungy, and the stock heat plate, which is what this backing piece is called. That heat plate is all destroyed, so yeah, I'm going to have to replace the heat plate in both of them. I've already pulled it off of this housing, and it's fine underneath, but that heat plate is destroyed. It's just a metal piece that isolates the bearings from the heat, and it degrades and gets destroyed just like that. So yeah, one more piece I'll have to add, but now it should be a whole lot easier to get these fittings out now that I can lay this flat and actually get a little torque on it. With the turbine housing and the compressor removed, I've worked a little bit on this circlip for this part of the housing. Honestly though, I don't think it absolutely has to be taken out in order to do the rest of the rebuild, so I'm going to try and see if I can leave it in place. So the next O-ring that has to, or the next circlip that has to come out is this one. There we go, like that. And the circlip comes out nice and easy. So I started pulling out and arranging the clips. I've found that a pair of hooks of different angles is helpful in order to get some of these pieces out. Ooh, yeah, that little bushing is cooked. So I'm laying them out in kind of the reverse order of how I pulled them. And there's more pieces inside there. You can see I'm going to get that ring washer out and then see if there's a way that I can drive out the front oil seals and things, because there's not anything else that I can see obstructing this. It just needs a little encouragement to come out. Finally got the circlip off. Took an extra pair of hands to get a screwdriver up under the thick side when I got the tension released and prying it up and out. And now these guys come apart, which doesn't actually help me as much as I thought it might, but this does give me access to clean up everything and allows me to replace the O-ring with the new O-ring provided in the rebuild kit. A little careful prying, very, very careful. I was able to get this guy, this top plate, to move. There. Yeah, see all that crud going on in there is part of the reason why it's not wanting to cooperate. And there's the other oil seal, the front oil seal, which looks like it comes out when you take the plate out. These required a little bit of encouragement with PB blaster and vice grips and a little hammer action in this dimension, in this direction, to get them to actually begin to unseat. It's fairly simple. I also removed the O-ring from this surface. I need to remove the O-ring from this surface as well, which looks something like this. So I'm keeping everything again as it faces me so that all of my parts are laid out consistently, and then I can begin the replacement procedure. This will likely be the turbo that I keep out of the two of them, and I'll likely be selling the other one, and I'll have to get two heat plates for the back so that I can place that. Now if this cooperates, there we go. Thrust plate orients thusly, and the oil seal on the front. Yeah, that guy's got a lot of coke formed on it, which is another indicator that the oil got to be pretty hot. And then you can see what it looks like inside. Fairly straightforward stuff here. This is probably another washer or possibly a circlip. Something, nope, just the bushing itself. So, okay, there's the bushing, and it kind of looks like these are the short form factor bushings, but frankly, it's a little hard to tell. And then there's the other C-clip. So I'm going to clean off some of the carbon deposits from coking up oil using one of the picks and see if I can get most of it out of these channels so that I can get them clear, because that would be fantastic if I could do that. So I guess for this part of the turbo rebuild, you kind of have to play dentist. And then you want to work this ring off of its ringland, sort of slowly but surely, by kind of getting up under it and trying to get it to move forward a bit. There you go. I think you can sort of set it off into that second ringland. So it seems the trick is you just hold it down as you work your way around and try not to scrape up the surface of the shaft too bad. And then we'll do the same thing for getting it out of this lower ringland.